G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today we are here to cover some trade rumours, and oh boy, we've hardly even had a game played yet and we have so many trade rumours to cover. Some of them may have a lot of validity to them, some may not. We'll cover all of them in this video, so let's not waste more of your time. Let's get into the first trade rumour, involving Collingwood forward, Norm Smith medalist in Bobby Hill. Now there's been some speculation about Bobby Hill wanting to go back to WA. However, in recent reporting, he does say that he does love his time at Collingwood, but he wants to focus on his footy. A lot of the time players tend to say that when they want to have a little bit more money, I would assume. This is very similar to teammate in Darcy Cameron. So I'm going to combine these two because recent news came out from 9 News Melbourne saying fresh contract news out of Collingwood. Both Darcy Cameron and Bobby Hill are expected to sign. Cameron is expected to sign a contract until 2028, while Bobby Hill is eyeing a deal that will see him remain at the Pies until 2030. Now, I personally think both of them will sign. Collingwood don't tend to lose many players. Even though WA seem to be a real hotspot for players coming back at the moment, I think those two will be staying at Collingwood for the long term. Luke Davies-Uniacke, it seems more and more likely now that he will re-sign with North Melbourne. I thought this could potentially see him join St Kilda because they've got the big war chest. They're looking to try and sign a big money player, and LDU look like the biggest chance. However, in more recent times, it does seem that he is more open to re-signing with North Melbourne at a long-term deal. And Alistair Clarkson, I think, came out with a pretty refreshing take of this. He did say, all indications are that he will want to stay at our footy club, but I was pretty confident with that with Buddy Franklin was going to say as well. Throughout that interview as well, he did say how well Hawthorn were after he left anyway. A club does not rely on one singular player. However, I think that LDU sees what they're building there at North Melbourne, and I think he'll re-sign. Tim Kelly had some interesting takes in the last couple of weeks. A lot of people were saying that he could potentially move on to a different club because West Coast have been down in the dumps for quite a while now. And in a recent interview, he did say there's been a lot of contract talk, but he's just trying to find his love for the game again, and hopefully that comes. Yeah, Tim Kelly, I don't know, it's been a very interesting talking point when he did sign with West Coast. Geelong got 3 first-round picks for him, and he's been a good player for West Coast without being a great player. I think that he'll stay at West Coast. He's got a young family over there. I think he's got 3 kids, and I think that's a big reason why he wanted to move back to WA. So I don't see Tim Kelly going anywhere, but it is interesting that he's lost his love for the game. And we saw players like Jaden Stevenson in the off-season that he retired from the game due to falling out of love for the AFL. So how well he does this season. He's had a couple of good pracky games, so hopefully when he comes in round 1, he has a good performance. Looking at Harley Reed, this is such a bullshit story, but I want to cover it anyway. Harley Reed was recently seen from the Western Australian sitting next to Sam Mitchell at Tom Barrass's wedding and having a laugh with him, and some speculation has been talking about that he would join Hawthorn, and they were having some real big conversations regarding a potential move in the off-season. I don't know what lies for Harley Reid in the future, if he's going to want to come back to Victoria or what he wants to do, but this has nothing to do with a trade rumour. This is just complete gossip bullcrap, and the Western Australian at it again, I guess. I don't think this has any sort of merit towards it. But before we go any further, a message from me. If you guys enjoy the content and you want to see more, then make sure to become a member on the channel today. For just $4 a month, you can get early access to video essays, access to live recording to the Boundary Riders podcast, along with exclusive stream perks and much more. And something that I'm super excited to introduce to channel membership this year is the members vote. Every week with the review, you can cast your vote to have your say on the Boundary Riders medal. So for all that and more, click the link down below, and for the added bonus of getting an extra inch onto your member, then do it now. But anyway, let's get back into the content. Kysaiah Wanganeen-Milera has been an interesting talking point for St Kilda. A lot of people are saying that he could be offered up to $1 million to leave St Kilda at the end of the season. Now, he is a South Australian boy. He is the nephew of Gavin Wanganeen, so he does have a connection back here in South Australia. And Port Adelaide, there's been talking points about a couple of halfbacks. They did lose Dan Houston last season, so they may be looking to fill up that role with a person with such quality like Kysaiah Wanganeen-Milera. It does say here that rival contracts offers are between 6 to 10 years in length, according to Cal Toomey. And when he's out of contract at the end of this season, he may look to move on. Now, St Kilda have been pretty good as of late trying to re-sign players, and they do have a huge amount of money just sitting there. I believe that he will probably stay with St Kilda. I think that he's going to sign a big money deal to stay at the club. However, he does have links back to South Australia, specifically Port Adelaide. And Port Adelaide have a couple of players in that halfback role that could potentially be leaving at the end of the year. So I think it's a bit of a watch, just keep an eye on. But I don't think he's going to go anywhere. We'll talk about a couple of the other Port players in a minute. But Luke Jackson, this is a very interesting story to come out a couple of weeks ago. Victorian clubs have headlined by Melbourne are exploring the possibility of pursuing a trade for Luke Jackson. So a couple of years ago, signed with Fremantle, wanted to go home. And now there's talk that he wants to potentially come back to Victoria and even return to his former club in the Demons. I find this extremely hard to believe. I think that the source of this story is Mitch Cleary. I can't see this happening whatsoever. Mitch Cleary came up with the genius trade rumour last year of Paddy Dangerfield potentially coming back to the Adelaide Crows. That turned into absolute nothingness. My feeling is that this Luke Jackson trade rumour has a lot of earmarks of that, so I take that one with a huge grain of salt. Kane Farrell. So a lot of Victorian clubs are pursuing Kane Farrell. He is one of the halfbacks that I was talking about with Wanganeen-Milera. There's been a lot of talk that he could potentially have moved last year. However, he stayed with Port Adelaide, and Ken Hinkley, he's one of the big players for Ken Hinkley. However, with Josh Carr taking over, I think there is some talk that a lot of Port players could be on the outer. Now, I don't think Kane Farrell will be. I think that he will stay. I think he's going to get a lot of run off of halfback this year. I think he's going to be a mainstay for the Power. So I don't think he'll leave, but there is a little bit of a question mark on his future. And it's sticking with Port Adelaide, it's Miles Bergman. There's a lot of talk about him last year looking to go back to Victoria. That fell through. He stayed with the Power. He's 23 years of age and has been firmly linked to a lot of Victorian clubs. He has chose to put his contract talks on hold and has understood the Victorian clubs are pretty confident that they can get him out of there. Or Dan Houston last year go to Collingwood. There was also talk that he could have joined Melbourne, but obviously with a huge amount of controversies over their period that he didn't go to Melbourne, he went to Collingwood. So with a lot of love talking about the Demons, I mean, Melbourne could be a potential suitor for Miles Bergman. He's a pretty good player. I think he's a better player when he's playing off that wing to half-back role, but he's shown that he can play quite tall as a tall defender, as a stopper. He did that against Jeremy Cameron last year, so I do think there will be a lot of clubs looking for his signature, and I think that this could potentially be a player who moves on from Port Adelaide at the end of the season. On Tom De Koning. Multiple sources are familiar with the situation, said the Saints have indicated that they are prepared to offer De Koning a 7-year contract worth $12 million. That's nearly $2 million a year for Tom De Koning. He is a great ruckman. Is he worth that? I don't know. I think he's in for a massive year though, so he potentially could be worth that amount. There's been some whispers and murmurings though that Carlton are pretty confident that they can keep him though. So watch this space on Tom De Koning. We've seen a couple of big money players reject St Kilda. We saw Finn Callaghan recently re-signed to the Giants. Can St Kilda finally land a big fish? I'm not too sure. But Tom De Koning is probably the biggest one they're looking at this stage. And his brother in Sam De Koning is being chased by the Gold Coast Suns. He is out of contract at the end of the year, Sam De Koning. He is expected to remain at the Cats. However, the Suns have a lot of interest and have 3 first-round picks. Now, the Gold Coast have kept a huge eye on their academy players over the last couple of years. We've seen Lombard, Walter, Rogers, a lot of players through the draft. So I think the Gold Coast now, if they're going to pick up players, they've got to look for players that are ready-made to come into the club. Now, we'll talk about Matt Rowell in a minute, but Sam De Koning will be a massive get for them. But I think he'll stay at Geelong. I think it depends on what money is offered from the Gold Coast on that one. Kysaiah Pickett. What an enigma this player is. Kysaiah Pickett has seemed to have been texting Dockers mates of his, telling them that he wants to join them at the end of the year, according to John Rowell. Very interesting from the president of the Melbourne Football Club and former player in Brad Green. He has came out and put a price tag. We will either keep a highly talented A-grade player or it will be 3 first-round picks for a trade. Pickett is contracted, I think, until 2027 or 2028. If he doesn't get a trade that they want, Melbourne, they can easily hold him to a contract. I'll be very interested to see how this plays out, but I think at the moment, he's the biggest chance of leaving at the end of the year. I think this one has the biggest merit, this trade rumour. We'll have to see how Melbourne go throughout the season. However, the fact that they're already putting a price tag on Kysaiah Pickett is a big indicator as to, I think, where Melbourne think he's going to finish at the end of the season. Matt Rowell. At the moment, the Gold Coast are pretty confident they will hold him. Damien Hardwick's recently said that we're confident that Matt will stay. He's loved it here, being with the players, coaching staff, and the fans. And when asked in an interview from Spider Everett, he asked him point blank if he will be at the Suns in 2026, and he said a resounding yes. I think Matt Rowell will probably stay, sign until free agency. I think he's going to stay at the Suns. I don't think a team like Collingwood or Carlton or Essendon can reap him out of the Gold Coast just yet. But I am very interested that the fact that the Gold Coast didn't make him the captain this year. I thought that if they were going to change their captain to Matt Rowell, it's a ready-made role for him. They gave it to Noah Anderson. I don't know if that's an indication of them being a little bit cautious of picking a captain like Matt Rowell if there is contract talks that he could potentially leave. But I did think that was quite interesting. Chad Warner, a little bit of information regarding him. He had a recent interview saying he's obviously out of contract and is enjoying his time in Sydney at the moment. He's very open to everything and he's just playing the year and seeing how it goes. Now, Will Schofield, who's a big media person in WA, he has said that he will not go to the Fremantle Dockers. He says that will simply not happen. So that obviously leaves him signing with Sydney or going to the West Coast Eagles. I think at this stage, there's been a lot of indications on him staying at the Swans. There's been a lot of offers from Sydney, potentially going for long-term deals, trying to sign him until free agency on a short-term deal. The way it lies at the moment, I think Chad Warner will sign a shorter-term deal at the Sydney Swans to get into free agency, and then we'll have to wait and see what happens from there. That's my feeling at this stage. However, that also depends on how Sydney's year goes. If Sydney go all the way to the end of the year and win the premiership, I think it's more likely that he leaves. And finally, we're talking about Jamara Ugle-Hagan. Obviously, he's been suffering with a lot this off-season, a lot of reporting, some be false, some be true. However, a lot of people are saying that he won't be at the club at the end of this year. David King has said he thinks it's 100 to 1 that he will be at the Dogs at the end of 2025. Recently on Footy Classified, Damien Barrett said that Brisbane have a short list of key forwards around the competition that they are trying to target to replace Joe Danaher. Jamara is one of those players. So interesting if Brisbane can get him out there. Joe Danaher went all the way up there, signed a long-term contract on a lot of money, and he seemed to have played a lot better football than what he did at Essendon. So maybe a little bit of a fresh start could be good for Jamara. However, Marcus Bontempelli, the captain, has said that he doesn't buy into all of the trade rumours regarding Jamara. He wants him to stay. Recent reporting from Sam McClure saying that that's a relationship he has to patch. I don't know how much validity there is to that story. We'll just have to wait and see. Jamara, I think, is a real 50-50 at this stage. Hopefully he does stay at the Dogs because I think that's where he was drafted. He was an academy player for them. I think he's going to be a great player for years to come, but he needs to be keeping the standards at the club or else then, he has to move on from the Bulldogs and they have to keep a high standard at the footy club. But guys, that is all the trade rumours we have for this video. There was a lot of them to cover and apparently they're going to just continue to drop. The fact that we haven't even had, when I'm recording this on Friday night, there has not even been a game of football yet, and yet we've had so many trade rumours. Are they all true? Is there much validity to them? I'm not quite sure. Make sure to let me know down below how you feel about the trade rumours already rolling through this year. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. But for now, we'll catch you all on the next one.